The Republican Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania says the FBI agents have seized his cell phone. He says it happened today, one day after the FBI launched the unprecedented search of former President Trump's home in Florida. Congressman Perry is a staunch Trump ally who played a key role in the former president's efforts to overturn the election, according to the January 6th committee. The committee has also accused him of seeking a pardon from the Trump White House after the deadly insurrection. In a statement to NBC News, Congressman Perry says 3 FBI agents approached him this morning while he was traveling with his family, handed him a warrant, and told him to turn over his phone. Scott Perry says he's outraged, though not surprised, that the FBI, under the direction of Merrick Garland's DOJ, would seize the phone of a sitting member of Congress. Donald Ayer is back with us again tonight, Deputy Attorney General in the first Bush administration. Donald thanks Republicans pouncing and deflecting the process. The House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy just moments ago accused the Justice Department of targeting members of Congress and the former president. But the context is, first, a document search at Mar-a-Lago last night or yesterday, now a phone seize from someone who helped with the attempted overturn of the election. Are these dots connectable?
Well, I think they're part of a process that we've known was going on for quite a while, and it's reached the phase pretty clearly where conduct actions have to be taken that do become public. You know, it's our system, and it has been throughout certainly my lifetime and yours, that investigations take place. And they're very much limited by the requirement in most cases of having to go and get a warrant from a judge. And it's a detailed and a very rigorous process. It applies to the search of Mar-a-Lago. It applies certainly to the seizure, as Congressman Perry reported, of his own phone. And that's how the process works. And there's every reason to think that it's going forward in the appropriate way. And the nature of the process is one where it's totally wrong and not the way we go at it to have public reports on why things are happening. That would be very unfair to the people who are being investigated, because you'd be spreading all sorts of information about suspicious conduct on the public record.
Of course, in a normal world, but Donald, this is public, not because of anything the government did, but because of who was searched. Donald Trump's the one who released all of this, and now the machine around him is ginning up all of this fury, and one side of this argument doesn't seem to understand the process. Would a response of some sort, given these extraordinary circumstances, be responsible?
Well, I think that Merrick Garland has repeatedly, educated the public and spoken on the issue of how this all works. And he's said repeatedly that he is not going to be giving comments on the ongoing investigation, even though he's been clear there is an ongoing investigation. And he's been clear, I think he said this is the most important investigation in the history of the Department of Justice. So he's given an explanation. I really have to say, I think it's only the people who willfully don't want to understand, but even more, they don't want other people to understand what's going on here, who are spreading the idea that there's something inappropriate. There's nothing inappropriate at all.
Yeah, well, you know that, and everybody who knows anything about the legal system knows that, but there are millions of people caught up in a certain media ecosystem who at this moment likely don't understand that at all. And on top of the search of Mr. Trump's Florida home, you were with us last night, we've since learned, according to Mr. Trump's own lawyer, that investigators visited Mar-a-Lago back in June to review the area where the documents were being held. The reports are they padlocked an area because they didn't want anybody getting in there. Does that raise any further questions for you about what may have precipitated this search?
Well, there's been a lot of talk today about what the search is about, and is the search really a separate thing from the January 6th issues, and is it only really limited to questions of document removal from the White House? And I think the answer is I don't know, and I don't think you know, and I don't think we have a way to know exactly the ground, because quite appropriately, again, the affidavit for the warrant hasn't been released. Releasing the affidavit to tell the world about what went on would be highly unfair, among other things, to spread word of what suspicious things are out there. That's exactly what we don't do in order to be fair to the people who are being investigated. So I think there are lots of issues that we're all curious about, but the way the process has always worked, and quite properly, is that we have to wait and see. We have a Justice Department that's doing its job in the right way. And the fact that there are a lot of people who want to scream about how inappropriate it is, as you say, there are people who don't want to understand, and they don't want other people to understand. And I don't know what you can do about that. You got to use the system the way it's designed and the way it works.
I don't know what you do about it either. Donald Ayer, it's good of you. Thank you so much again tonight.